Please listen carefully.
Hello, I'm Tamara. Welcome to my podcast, Listen to Your Body, Heal Your Life. Today I want to actually provide you with a little bit more introduction. This is episode 3, and it's actually a lot of fun for me to produce and put these podcasts out. But I wanted to talk a little bit more about some of the background that brought me to podcasting, and really the reason that I am integrating mental health with physical health. I've kind of been aware for, a few years that there is a connection between how we treat our body and what we put into our body, and ultimately how we end up feeling physically and emotionally. And so, I don't know, it was about a year ago that I decided that I maybe wanted to become an integrated nutrition specialist. And it's very interesting because the notebook that I'm using right now has notes from several of my projects and things that I look into. And so I was this morning looking, before I was getting ready to start the recording of this podcast, I went about a year ago on YouTube to the AFMCP conference, which was the functional forum on YouTube. I get a lot of information from there, but it looks like about a year ago I went to a seminar online, so it's virtually and it's on YouTube and it's free, you can go there too, about the evolution of medicine in technology. And I was looking at and trying to explore the option of becoming a health coach. And in that process of watching that YouTube video, I saw a speaker, Dr. Kelly Brogan, who wrote the book, A Mind of Your Own. And that's the book that I'm actually going to talk about in today's episode. But she really is talking about, in this talk, she said, what functional medicine does to your brain. So I started to kind of maybe have a little distrust for traditional medicine. I don't know, way back when I started noticing that doctors don't have any problem prescribing things that cause problems for me in my own life. But I heard Kelly Brogan giving this talk, and she talked about allopathic medicine and said that's how traditional medicine is termed by functional medicine doctors. But she said that they apply acute care medicine to the management of chronic illnesses, and that symptom suppression is what drives further pathology. So what you understand is that the medicine that people take is just for suppression of symptoms instead of looking at what the underlying causes of the illness are. And so I really did look at that about a year ago in June. So this month, a year ago, my journey to start finding a functional medicine doctor who could actually help me. And as I've gone deeper into this process and thought maybe I want to be a health coach, or maybe I need to go to a functional medicine doctor, the truth I keep arriving at is that I need to listen to my own body. And it's really interesting what I'm learning as I'm doing that. Anyway, in this talk, Dr. Brogan said that medicine and medicine science is funded by the $1.3 trillion pharmaceutical industry. They are funding medicine and medical science. And so she says there's a lot of corruption, a lot of enmeshment, and a lot of conflicting interest. And so I really wanted to tell you that it was about a year ago when I came across Dr. Kelly Brogan, and that was at the AMFCP conference. And I do more of that digging, and as I do more of that digging, I find amazing things that I want to share with you. And as I'm sharing those things, I am excited because there's more and more that I'm discovering, and more of my own health that I'm achieving, and hopefully empowering you to start really listening to your body, not just on an emotional, mental level, but there's something at the core in our body that can direct us toward full health if we just listen to it. On top of giving you background, today I wanted to also talk about a concept that I've noticed in my practice with my clients. So when people come to therapy, they frequently kind of have a general awareness that something is bothering them. They kind of are aware of when it comes up and when it's most problematic. But most of the time I've found that people don't have like intimate details related to the problem that they're bringing to therapy. And so what the therapeutic process does when I'm sitting with my clients is I help them with two things. I help them connect at a deeper level with what's happening in their body, and I also help them learn how to focus on details to identify where the problem exists or what their relationship with the problem is. Because usually we have some interaction with a problem that's going on in our lives, and we don't pay attention to that interaction. We just know that there's a problem. So one of the things that I've noticed in myself and clients is that there's this lack of focus and this lack of inner awareness. So whenever clients, and sometimes I do the same thing, start a project, whenever you decide you're going to have a new hobby, or you're going to start exercising, or maybe you want to drop habit, you want to drop overeating, or you want to drop negative thinking, it feels good when it stays the focus of your attention. And as long as that thing stays the focus of your attention, the motivation is there. The problem is that the focus gets lost even with a new day or with new pain or with new deadlines. And so it's easy to kind of lose focus of the thing that you're trying to focus on and shift. So what I found is really helpful, one of the things that's super effective is my clients, people ask me, how often should I come to therapy? And the reality is, coming once a week keeps your concerns on the front burner. And so it's easy to not lose focus on the things you're trying to change if you come once a week. But sometimes once a week is not even enough. One of the things that I've found that has been an amazing tool for my clients and for me in my personal life is a 30-day challenge with a specific focus that has journaling on a daily basis, and that keeps you focused on the nuances of what gets in the way, what helps, and how things change with a focus of attention. So the difference between this kind of journaling and typical journaling is that typical journaling is like kind of word vomit. Like people just like vomit onto the journal page and go, there, I'm done. And actually that's only the first step. Typically after you put the words down, you have to actually gain insight or pay attention to the insights that you're getting to be able to know what to do next. And so what I'm finding that is super effective is that I can put a step-by-step process into a journaling project when someone decides to focus daily on a specific problem in their journaling process that helps them to understand their own process, and that leads to real change. So, for example, my current challenge that I'm in and that I'm journaling about daily is my 30-day supplementation challenge. So in my first episode, I talked to you about magnesium and magnesium deficiencies, and I shared all of the insights that I had gained when I did the research. And after about 6 weeks, I started to discover that I needed to make some shifts with that. So on the day that I'm recording, I think I'm on day 12 of my 30-day challenge. Yes, I'm feeling more energy. I'm not having any depressive or anxiety symptoms, and I think those are related to mineral deficiencies, not necessarily related to anything. I don't have anything in my environment that's anxiety producing or depression producing, but I found myself feeling down for not a really good reason other than feeling tired. And that was at the very beginning of my this 30-day supplementation challenge with my journaling. But I was listening on day 10, so I was a few days ago, I was listening to Dr. Carolyn Dean, who has a weekly radio show, and I'll put a link to her radio show in the notes. But I was listening more to her about health, and she said something really interesting. So we've had the recent suicides of Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain, and she also pointed out that the violence of the school shooters, all of those school shooters were kids who were put on antidepressant medications. And Caroline made the reference that if we could just treat mineral deficiencies, there would be less anxiety and depression and less lifelong therapy for people. And I want to say that I'm not an advocate of using therapy as a forever crutch. I think it's a tool, but I also think that it's meant for a really short term. So in my first challenge, so I sort of got off on a tangent, but the tangent really is related to the fact that I'm looking at how does replacing minerals, and I'm doing it with Dr. Dean's full regimen, except for she has one product that has milk in it, so I don't use that product because I'm allergic to milk. But I'm looking at how does this full regimen affect me. And the reality is I had little twinges of anxiety and depression. And what I'm going to tell you about in the book from Kelly Brogan is that anxiety and depressive symptoms are a reflection of inflammation in the body. And I've had a hunch for like about a year that it's related to inflammation for me too. And it was only recently where I really realized that my inflammation in my body seems to be responding really well to magnesium. And so at the beginning of every single episode of my podcast, I'm going to check in with you about whatever my current 30-day challenge is, because I think it's really important for you to understand that therapists have to have a personal growth process too, that my 30-day challenges that I put myself through are a process to help me understand, have insight about my own health and mental emotional well-being, taking on habits, doing things that are new, overcoming obstacles. And as I share that, I hope that you will be inspired to start doing your own 30-day challenges as well. So I can report on my first 10 days of the 30-day challenge. And I've said before that I believed that having long-term trauma and stress leads to depletion of the immune system, which leads to chronic problems of health. And so in my first week, I had that pain in my body. Like I was very overwhelmed with feelings of sadness, and I didn't know why. I wasn't really able to focus. And I actually was watching, there's this popular Netflix show. I don't know if it's popular, but it's called 100% Hotter. So I was watching, I was not able to focus that day. I was supposed to be working on some production that I need to do for my podcast for this show. And I wasn't really able to focus very well or very clearly. And so instead I was watching 100% Hotter. And I'm sitting there watching 100% Hotter and telling myself that I'm ugly and that I really need a makeover too. And it was a funk because I don't think that I'm ugly, but I have moments where I just like thought, oh, the world is over for me. I need to change my whole look. I need to change who I am. And that's not characteristic thoughts for me. Those were really kind of depressive thoughts. And so not understanding why, I kind of looked into it to figure out what it was that was going on. I started listening to my body. And I realized that I just needed to like fix my hair and makeup and make myself look pretty that day. But I also think that it was connected to a mineral deficiency, because as I've continued through all of my days, I have felt less and less of that kind of depressive, too tired, overly anxious feeling. So I'm feeling more confident in my body, and but I also started feeling, I would say that I probably have 15 pounds extra that I carry around that I never really carried around or struggled with before. But I had this really low energy, feelings of fatigue, and I interpreted that as hunger, so I would eat. Well, since I've been supplementing with the minerals, I have had more confidence in my body, and I've also been way more aware that I don't need to overeat because I don't have pain and I don't have problems with fatigue, so I'm not overeating. So that should be really happy news. But on that day, I was feeling sad and angry because my body issues weren't my fault. So I put myself through so many, I don't know, self-deprecating thoughts and struggles and too many diets and too much exercise when it was a mineral deficiency. So now my body seems to be humming, and I seem to be responding really well to replacing my minerals, and I'm feeling better, and everything that I had put into it before was a missed target. So I was upset. And I was also sad and angry because I had a history of trying to work with my doctors. But what I didn't know then, which I'm aware of now, is they didn't have any training. And so they don't know how to do anything but give me a pill to try to cover a symptom instead of helping me understand how to heal my body at a deeper level. So all the time I was going to them with the hope that I would get help, I was getting instead a bias that they needed to just suppress symptoms so I could feel better when I was wanting to be well. So, okay, by the third day on Dr. Dean's protocol, I'd had no negative thoughts for myself. So she has a multi-mineral supplement program, and it seems to be really, really, really good. But I was still upset. And by day 4 of this challenge, so today is day 12, I think, by day 4 of the challenge, I was listening to her radio show, Dr. Dean, Carolyn Dean's radio show, and I woke up with these really intense foot cramps again. I reached out to them for support, and they pointed me to their podcast. And on the podcast, they said, here's the research, here's what we recommend, you're on your own, listen to your body. And so I was so sad and angry that nobody else was helping me with my body that I wanted to scream. And I really started to wonder what was going on in my body, but nobody else is going to tell me. So I started to wonder if, because I've been taking hypothyroid medication, levothyroxine, for probably about 5 years, and it came after a yearly physical, and doctor saw something on a blood test and said, your blood levels are a little low, here, take this. And I never questioned it, I just took it. But since that time, I've wondered about, do I really have hypothyroidism? Because I haven't really had other symptoms. It was based on a blood test, not on any symptoms that I complained about. So I had that foot cramp that I woke up with that day was so intense that I was dreaming that I had a foot cramp, and then it was like 2 or 3 dreams in a row, and then I woke up with a foot cramp, and it was a very severe one. It took several minutes for me to walk it off. It was pulling my toes in the wrong direction. So I'm thinking about this and listening to my intuition and like kind of paying attention, and then I think, I wonder if there's a connection between the thyroid medicine I was taking and foot cramps. So I go to the Synthroid website, and this is a direct quote. Side effects can occur with Synthroid. Side effects of Synthroid are often a result of your body getting too much medicine. And so I wrote down here, of the list of side effects that they talk about that are connected with too much medicine, I wrote down the symptoms that I had. Here they are: irregular or rapid heartbeat, chest pain or shortness of breath, muscle weakness, nervousness, irritability. Remember I said I was so angry I couldn't handle myself? Yes. Sleeplessness, I was having insomnia again, change of appetite, diarrhea, excessive sweating, which I have in the mornings, and leg cramps. So I'm thinking, holy smokes, I'm having thyroid medicine overdose symptoms. So what do I do again? I go looking online to see what I can find, and I found an article that says take magnesium for 6 weeks before stopping your thyroid medicine. It had been 6 weeks. I'm having overdose symptoms. I stopped. And immediately, the next day, I'm sleeping through the night. I had no leg cramps. I had 0 heart symptoms. I had 0 irritability or nervousness. And I know it's TMI, but I had normal BMs instead of diarrhea. So by day 5, no anxiety or depressive symptoms. By day 6 in the morning, I woke up and my body felt so at ease and quiet, like more than I'd ever felt before. It was kind of uncomfortable to feel that at ease and quiet in my body. So it was a feeling that I have to get used to. By day 10, no anxiety or depression at all, feeling excited about life and well in my body. Well, about 3 days ago, I started feeling tired, and I could not figure out why I was feeling so tired. And so I, like dragging tired, even though I was getting enough rest, even though I'm taking my mineral supplements, and could not figure it out. I figured it out this morning. I have a steroid inhaler that I use for asthma that I've been slowly starting to wean off. So I was at 3/4 of the medicine. I'd already reduced it by 1/4 and was still feeling good and was still able to blow really amazing numbers. But here's the thing. With those canisters, they only have so many doses. And I ran out of medicine about a week ago, and I didn't notice that the canister I was taking my medicine from was empty until this morning. So it's crazy, but I have to pay closer attention to that. And so where I thought I couldn't figure out what was going on, the unfeeling symptoms that I have when I am not taking enough asthma medicine or when my asthma is out of control is I get really tired. I don't have asthma attacks, I don't wheeze, but my numbers go down and I get really tired. So today I figured it out after about 3 days, instead of when I look at my numbers and go back and look at it and see. That's one of the things that the 30-day journal challenge can do. I could compare the numbers. I could see exactly when my fatigue happened. I can see exactly what's connected to what. And this is me journaling about my 30-day challenge, and these are the things I'm learning in my body because I'm paying attention. And so I'm going to update the 30-day challenge. I'm going to tell you where I'm at and what my challenge is every time I do a podcast episode, so that maybe if you're interested, you can do that too. I'm working on a download, although this week I'm going to a training, and so I'm not going to have as much production time this week as I've had in other weeks. So I won't have that PDF download for this episode so that you can start doing your own 30-day challenge. I'm doing the 30-day challenge journal in a PDF form that's connected with this podcast when you give me your email address. But it's not going to be available this week. It'll be available in coming weeks, so watch for that. So on to episode 3, the truth about depression. Dr. Kelly Brogan is a naturopathic psychiatrist, and she wrote this book, A Mind of Your Own, and the subtitle is The Truth About Depression and How Women Can Heal Their Bodies and Reclaim Their Lives. And so the reason I chose this book, I told you I came across it about a year ago when I was thinking about adding health coaching to my career as a marriage and family therapist. And I had it on the shelf, but for some reason, for the last year, I've been like hesitant to pick it up because it's thick. There's a lot of data there. And the message in this book resonates so strongly with mine. And I want to just read you a quote from at the end of the first half of the book. She says, "Release fear and all it prevents you from doing. Instead, cultivate your intuition and combine it with this newly discovered knowledge," the knowledge that's in her book, "and you will no longer be dependent on any medication, any doctor, or even any system. You'll be in your own power." And as a therapist, I believe it's my mission, I've felt this for a long time, to give you the tools that I believe are your birthright, that you can always rely on as your guide. That when you're fully tapped into your body and your inner voice and your intuition, then you can go deeper and you can discover what it is that you need that drives your life in the direction that you want it to go. I'm a full believer in that. And I'm also a full believer that in the mental health field, which you probably heard when I talked last week about the numb epidemic, I'm a full believer that it's my job, it's my responsibility to absolutely give you all of the tools as a therapist. If I hold back or if I don't understand how to manage my life myself, how am I going to help anyone else figure out what they need to do to navigate on their own? And what's worse, why have one client walk in the door if that client is only going to learn how to add my confusion to their own, or if that client is only going to learn how to follow a different guru instead of listening to their own voice? So that's why Kelly's book resonates with me. But I'm not going to lie to you. This book also shook me because as a marriage and family therapist, it challenged my assumptions as a mental health worker. And it shook the sense of trust that I want to have in the medical establishment and in doctors. It really did. So I've had to put it down more than once, and actually reviewing her book is going to take 2 episodes because I've only gotten through part of section 1 for my notes, and I think that this is just such an important topic and it's so heavy that I only want to give you a piece of it. And if you decide that you want to go and get the book in between this week and next week and read it yourself, I say go and do that. Don't even hesitate. But I want to share with you the gems that I found when I was exploring her book. So in her introduction, she introduces revolutionary ideas. Here's what she says, and I'm going to read a quote. The first revolutionary idea that she says as a psychiatrist that blows your mind, that blew my mind as a therapist, is that medication for depression makes depression worse. Listen to this. This is a quote from page 3. Despite what you've been led to believe, antidepressants have repeatedly been shown in long-term scientific studies to worsen the course of mental illness, to say nothing of the risks of liver damage, abnormal bleeding, weight gain, sexual dysfunction, and reduced cognitive function that they entail. Then get this. The dirtiest little secret of all is the fact that antidepressants are among the most difficult drugs to taper from, more so than alcohol and opiates. I'm going to keep reading. While you might call it the, quote, going through withdrawal, unquote, we medical professionals have been instructed by Big Pharma to call it, quote, discontinuation syndrome, unquote, which is characterized by fiercely debilitating physical and psychological reactions. So essentially, like the Marlboro Man who was there to get you addicted to cigarettes, that statement says antidepressants will make you worse, and Big Pharma has the intention of getting us on antidepressant medication and calling tapering off discontinuation syndrome instead of helping you understand it as taking your health back. That blows my mind. Isn't it crazy? Okay, so number 2, the next idea is that instead of being a brain chemical imbalance, depression is often the result of chronic inflammation within the body. Think about it. If you're depressed, instead of calling depression the illness, but call depression the symptom that's pointing to something different in your body, then depression may be something that we can look at that would drive the path to something that would help us be healthier. Instead, depression is called the illness, and we're given drugs that make us sicker instead of healing depression. I hope you can see why just reading that part made me crazy as a therapist. Because I'm going to be honest, I've sent people to psychiatrists saying, oh, let's use some antidepressant medication to help you feel a little bit better so you can then access the work that we're trying to do here in therapy. And I don't say that anymore. Instead, I say, talk to me about what you're eating. Let's talk about whether or not you're supplementing with your minerals, right? It's not really my place to do that because I'm not a doctor, but I'm so freaking freaked out by the fact that antidepressant medication, oh, there's more. Okay, let me calm down. Okay. So, Kelly Brogan makes a compelling argument about how we're trained to think about our own health and well-being because of how traditional medicine trains doctors. Okay, so the way doctors are trained impacts the way we think about our own well-being. And according to that indoctrination, these things are true. Ready for them? Number 1, you're broken. Number 2, you should be afraid when you get a symptom. Number 3, you need chemicals, in other words, drugs, to help you feel better. Number 4, doctors know what they're doing. And I'm adding this. She didn't say this, but I'm adding, you should trust your doctor with your body. Number 5, the body's a machine requiring calibration through drugs that are dispensed by doctors. So essentially, your body's broken, it doesn't belong to you, you should trust it to someone else. Dr. Brogan calls this a system that is set up to disempower you and to leave you dependent on the vicious system that doesn't have your best interest in mind. This is a psychiatrist, a medical doctor who says this. And this is kind of a parallel message when I told you that I listened at the beginning of the week to Dr. Carolyn Dean's live radio show where she's talking about how her supplement products help people heal. She had a parallel message. You're on your own. She said, the medical machine isn't there to keep you well. And I am no different from anyone else. I think we all need to grow up and put our big girl pants on, or big boy pants on, and figure out how to take 100% responsibility for our own health. Even if that means that we decide that the doctors, the medical establishment who tells us that they know what's right for us, isn't. Like, it's maybe time for some wise, careful rebellion to take your health back. So Dr. Brogan's challenge is, instead of the ideas, taking in the ideas from traditional medicine and how doctors are trained and believing all of that, Dr. Brogan has a challenge. And here's what her challenge is, and I 100% resonate with it. It is that you can rely on your inner intuition to know what's best for you. That you should embrace a commitment to being your best self, medication-free. That you should embrace the idea that prevention is possible. That medication treatment comes at steep cost. And get this one, optimal health is not possible through medication. Let me say that one again. Optimal health is not possible through medication. The next one is your health is under your control, and you can use lifestyle medicine that she describes in her book to heal your body and send your body a signal of safety so that your body can start to do the work of healing itself. So I have to admit that while these ideas are exciting to me, this new challenge that she wants us to think about, and I've been sort of trying to be on that road for at least a year, but I know more than that. I've been trained my whole life to trust doctors, and yet I watched as a close family member of mine became sicker and sicker as our trusted family doctor, who I knew really well, just brushed off this family member's complaints and prescribed her Valium because she was complaining. But when she told this to me, I saw that her symptoms sounded a lot like diabetes. So I took her to my doctor, who I had vetted and who was really better at working with me. And when I told him symptoms or hunches about what was happening in my body, he listened to me. So I took her to my doctor, and he said, well, yeah, let's test her for diabetes then. And that confirmed my hunch. But without a proper diagnosis, if I had not taken this person to my doctor, who was willing to test her for diabetes, she would have just gotten an ongoing prescription for Valium. The real problem would have been ignored, and she would have had serious health consequences, because we know that diabetes can cause major, major damage in the body, and yet her doctor was giving her Valium. The good news is that with the proper diagnosis, she was able to take control of her health and took the steps that she needed and has reversed her diabetes. But how was Valium going to help with that, right? So that's one example of me having experiences with doctors that I start to really question what they're there for. The other, for me, is that I have asthma and allergies. I've shared that, and I've noticed really how easy it is for a doctor to just write me a prescription for prednisone. Like if I'm having a flare-up of symptoms, and especially before I started taking the minerals, when I would have a flare-up of symptoms, the doctor would just be really, really fast to pull out the prescription pad to write a hair trigger prescription for prednisone for me. But I know that prednisone has like really terrible, negative, body-damaging side effects. So, in spite of fear and my own reluctance to let go of my wish to maintain faith in the medical community, when Dr. Kelly Brogan's book pushed me to like look at things honestly, I just kept reading, even though what I'm reading I was finding disturbing. And I was finding it disturbing both on a personal level for me and my own health, as well as for my family, but also for clients, for people who I care for and spend my life trying to help on a daily basis. And realizing that the things that I've been taught about what happens in the brain of a person who's depressed is wrong. So in the first chapter, okay, so now I'm talking to you about chapter 1. I haven't even gotten beyond chapter 1, and we're already past a half hour in this podcast. So I'm going to give you a little bit of information about what she talks about depression and inflammation in the body, and some of the studies that she talks about and related to antidepressant medications. And then I'm going to leave off from there, and next week we'll talk about what her recommendations are. But this week I really wanted to talk about kind of the eye-opening things that she delves deeply into the book, because I think it's helpful to know that this information is out there. And if you decide that you may benefit from it, then you can go and find the book on Amazon and do the work yourself of exploring and starting to listen to your body so you can empower yourself in a different way. But the message of chapter 1 is that to be healthy in today's world, we have to cultivate a reliance on ourselves for our health. There are plenty of resources now that are available online. All of the research studies that I've looked at, research studies that doctors use, books, it's all out there at our fingertips now with the internet. And she says the second thing that we have to do to be healthy in today's world is to recognize that drug-based medicine makes you sick. And here's the research that she shared on that. It was really a broad research. She did what we call a literature review, or she actually found studies that did broad literature reviews over hundreds of thousands of people. And so one of the first studies that she points to, and that conclusions that come from some of these broad studies, is the conclusion that comes from 3 major research institutions: the British Medical Journal, the Journal of the American Medical Association, and the Centers for Disease Control. They all agree with the conclusion that psychiatric medication drugs are the 3rd leading cause of death after heart disease and cancer. I'm going to say it again. Psychiatric drugs are the 3rd leading cause of death after heart disease and cancer. Now, I don't know how that impacts you, but I'll tell you how it impacts me. I'm a mental health professional. I tend to look at psychiatric drugs as a tool to help my clients get better and get back in control of their lives. I don't want to think about the tools that I'm using to help people get better as the 3rd thing that would kill them after heart disease and cancer. No, my work is the opposite of the work that would go in that direction. So let me add some insult to injury. And I'm laughing not because I think it's funny, but I'm laughing because I'm just like flabbergasted and out of my brain about the information that I'm finding as I'm digging deeper. And I just want to empower you to pay attention, to listen, so that something different can happen, right? So here's the next study. The next study that I really wanted to highlight comes from, it was published in the British Medical Journal in 2011. And they did a survey of 2,500 common medical treatments. So think of this. This is a survey. They surveyed 2,500 medical treatments for their known beneficial outcomes. Okay, so here it is. Of 2,500 common treatments, 13% were found to be beneficial, 23% were likely to be beneficial. That's 36%. So just over a third are beneficial or likely to be beneficial. Just over a third. That means that 2/3 fall in a different category. So listen to this. 8% of those common medical treatments were found to be as likely harmful as beneficial. 6% were found to be unlikely beneficial, and 4% were found to be harmful or ineffective. These are common medical treatments. So if you did the math, you'll see that that's not 100%. So there's a last 46%, 46% of common medical treatments, 46, with unknown effectiveness. I feel like I should just give you a moment, like a full 60 seconds of silence now, to let that sink in to your brain. It blows my mind. And we trust the medical establishment so much with what's going on in our body. This morning I was reading a book called The Calcium Lie. And that's one that's going to follow up in a few weeks as well. And in The Calcium Lie, they talk about mineral insufficiency. And there's this chemical called bromide that they put in white flour. They started putting it in white flour in 1980. And bromide is known to cause cancer. And your body can't get rid of it unless you're fully mineralized in your body. So, like, how do we not know these things? Why aren't we being told to take minerals? It blows my mind. And instead, we're mineral depleted. We don't feel good. We go to the doctor, and the doctor gives us insufficient treatments. It feels like it's the same thing. It's the same thing as having UFOs come when you're driving through a field and beaming you up into the sky and giving you medical experiments. It's the same thing when you go to your doctor. You have a 2/3 chance of being treated the way aliens would treat you in a UFO. All right, so calm myself down again. This actually gets me really excited and angry, and like I want to get you off your butt and into an active place where you're going to start questioning what's happening for you instead of swallowing everything without questioning at all. So, let me tell you about the specific research that Dr. Brogan talks about in her book related to depression medication specifically. She, in her work and her education, has studied the entire body system as it's related to psychiatric symptoms, including depression. And what she found and what she suggests is that depression is not an illness, as I've said before, but a symptom of something else that's happening in the body. And as a symptom, instead of medicating it away, the best route we can take is to listen to it. So when people sit with me and they feel depressed or they're feeling sad, we have this tendency, I talked about it in the numb epidemic, episode 2 last week, that when we have a feeling, we want to push it away and push it to the side because we don't know what to do with that feeling. Well, what if these difficult feelings that we've had have been in our body long enough that we just want to push it away to the point where it's become depression? Well, it's even harder to sit with depression if you've been trained not to feel your feelings. But what if the answer is to sit in the depression and start to ask the question, both on a physiological level, as well as an emotional level, what is this really about? Well, the message that Dr. Brogan is giving is that what's happening in the body, and what's confirmed through research, is that what's happening in the body that's leading to depression is inflammation. It's not about brain chemistry. Instead, it's about sedentary lifestyle. It's about the processed food diet that most of us have. It's about unrelenting stress. It's about the brain-gut disturbance imbalance. We know that we have brain cells in our belly. We know that if the gut is disturbed, did you know that the lining of your intestine is only 1 cell deep? And so much of what we do, especially when we don't have enough minerals, is that we disrupt that 1 cell lining. If we disrupt that 1 cell lining, then there's not a tight knit between the cells that line the intestinal wall and the inside and outside of our body. The inside of your intestine is considered the outside of your body, and it's there to get rid of the garbage. But if there's not a tight knit between those cells, then things that shouldn't be getting into your bloodstream are, and causing inflammation. So that's the connection with the gut-brain disturbance. And that, so inflammation leads to gut-brain disturbance, which leads to depression and anxiety. What research is showing is that the most influential risk factor leading to depression from all of this body inflammation is high blood sugar. There's also an interesting study that confirms one of my own long-standing hunches about the immune system that Dr. Brogan talks about in the book, and it's related to these difficulties with chronic stress or inflammation. I don't know if you've seen, she doesn't talk about this in her book, but I don't know if you've seen the thing that goes around the internet about the ACEs score. I've seen a few YouTube videos about it. It's the ACEs is the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study, and what they say is that people who have higher scores on the ACEs measure have more likelihood of long-term health consequences throughout their life, which kind of that study has always made me feel upset and uncomfortable, because I know that myself, my clients who have high ACEs score can actually turn that around. And I'm learning more about mineralization of my body and seeing that all of those symptoms who I thought were connected to a high ACEs score can actually be resolved through proper mineralization. So I think that that study kind of is misdirected. I think those things are predictive maybe, but not a cause. I think there's more that goes into it. But Dr. Brogan talks about a 2013 research paper by Australian researchers that says that the high risk of depression is associated with systemic inflammation, and that risk also has these things in it, and that's why it made me think of these ACEs score, and that is like psychosocial stressors, poor diet, physical inactivity, obesity, smoking, altered gut function, allergies, dental cavities, sleep difficulties, and vitamin D deficiencies. So all of these inflammation markers in the body create something in your emotional mental system, which is the fight-flight response. Your body gets on defensive, and that shows up in anxiety or depression. Think about it. Anxiety is a real fight response. Depression is a flight response. So the subjects in the study from this 2013 paper, all of them had depression, chronic fatigue, or what the researchers were calling somatization, which is fatigue, sensitivity to pain, inability to concentrate, flu-like malaise, and cognitive issues. Those are things that I see in my clients who've had long-term trauma. And so I just think it's really interesting that we're seeing this is inflammation. So all of this, if you take all of this together, the conclusion is it's not in your head. Maybe your experiences have led to depletion in your body. For me, it's mineral depletion. Or maybe they're a result of long-term medication treatment, and that's what Dr. Brogan says in the book. She also talks about tired as this kind of idea of being wired and tired. So you might be depressed, but you feel wired and tired, and mislabel that as depression. And the wired tired idea is people who she's treated who feel like this inside like discomfort because there's too much activity going on the inside, like she calls it inner kinetic discomfort, restlessness, unease, insomnia, forgetfulness, being scatterbrained and stressed out and anxious or irritable and unable to concentrate. Dr. Brogan calls that depression. But the thing that's important to understand is that she doesn't call that depression to be able to prescribe a prescription. She calls that depression so that she says, look at all of these signs. What do you think that that means? What is it pointing to in your body in terms of a symptom? She also gave a very interesting case study of a 42-year-old woman who started with acne medication. Side effect of the acne medication was depressed mood. And after that, while she had a depressed mood, it eventually popped up with a thyroid problem. After her thyroid problem, that led to fibromyalgia, a yeast overgrowth problem, and by the time this person came to Dr. Brogan for help, she was getting 24-hour home health care. And Dr. Brogan is saying it started with acne medications. This person got better under Dr. Brogan's care with Dr. Brogan's system. And I'll be talking more about the system next week, but I'm obviously up against an hour almost, and I haven't even gotten past the first section of the book. But I want to really finish this section on depression with you, because I want you to start thinking about depression. Any feeling you have, whether it's uncomfortable or comfortable, anything feeling that you have in your body is like a barometer that gives you a compass to help you understand how you are in your environment, whether we're talking about safety, and even like if you feel unsafe in your environment and your body is telling you something's wrong, it could be what you're thinking about. There's so many different variables that go into this, but what your body is telling you is valuable stuff, because your feelings are the only compass that you have that tells you that something's not right. And I want to say, you have to pay attention. So I'm already discovering for myself the benefits of magnesium, and Dr. Brogan's theory of inflammation, and it's not really her theory, it's well researched, it's well documented in the book. I will put the notes in the show notes that point to the research that she gives in the book for the things that I've actually talked about on today's show. But I also found for me that the most powerful impact from this book is the statistics from a research study results about psychiatric medication specifically. In 2015, the British Medical Journal published the following. More than 500,000 people over age 65 in the West die every year from psychiatric medications. More than 500,000 people over age 65 in the West die every year from psychiatric medication. Is that my mom or my dad or my grandma or my grandpa or yours? Is this what we want? They also said that more patients die from FDA-approved antidepressants than do patients who take no drugs at all or who use alternative treatments for depression. And this is the clincher. Estimates are that the suicide rate among antidepressant users is 15 times higher than is reported publicly by the FDA. Okay, that's the British Medical Journal. I'll say the last one again. The suicide rate among antidepressant users is 15 times higher than what's reported publicly by the Food and Drug Administration. She also points out that antidepressants destabilize mood long term, and they've recently been labeled as carcinogens. And then get this. Okay, so my training has said, and how I've described it to my clients as a way to get them to understand that they need an antidepressant medication, is by saying that it deals with the serotonin in the brain, that it helps you if you have depression, that your serotonin is low, so you take medication for depression, it will regulate your serotonin levels or your norepinephrine levels, and then you'll feel better. Get this, there's no research that has ever been established that a particular brain state causes or even correlates with depression. So where Dr. Brogan says it's in the body, I think she's onto something. All of these researchers have to be onto something. It's not in the brain. There is no scientific study ever that has linked low serotonin to depression. And I'll put that reference in the show notes so you can read the study yourself. There's no scientific study that has ever linked low serotonin to depression. There have been 60 years of studies about neurotransmitters, dopamine and serotonin, and depression. 60 years. And in those 60 years, the results are conflicting. But they've never found a connection between neurotransmitters themselves and depression. I was taught in school that SSRIs are prescribed because they can shift the serotonin in the brain. But there's no proof. In fact, we can't even measure serotonin in the living human brain. So, research shows it's a myth. The serotonin theory is a myth that's touted as a truth. It's like serotonin brain low chemicals is like the tooth fairy or the Easter bunny or like Santa Claus. But they don't want us to ever wake up and realize that we're being fed a lie. So, isn't this a happy episode? I don't know. I all of this stuff that I'm reading and all the things that I'm researching to be able to do this podcast, to share these things with you, sometimes they absolutely infuriate me. And I think that the first step is to get infuriated, right? The first step in healing ourselves is to get upset and to find out what's the difference between a truth and a lie. I hope that what I've talked about today has activated you enough that you want to go and find out for yourself. that you want to go, like, maybe you think I'm a liar. Maybe you think Dr. Kelly Brogan doesn't even know what she's talking about. Maybe that's what you think. And if that's what you think, that's fine with me. But I think that we have to get off our butts. We have to pay attention to what's happening in our body. We have to pay attention to the messages that we're getting, and whatever message is coming from your doctor or from a psychiatrist or from a therapist, is you weigh it against your own sense of intuition. And if you don't have your own sense of intuition, that's the first thing you need to find. Because otherwise, the connection from your body and the connection from your own wellness is just going to get further and further, in my opinion. I am here to empower you. I want to give you reasons to listen to your body so you can heal your life. And yes, these things that I've read, that I've made notes on, upset me. They do. And I hope they upset you. I hope they upset you enough to get you to do something about it. If you like my show, please share it. Please share this information with other people. I think the best thing that we can do is have our very own health revolution, where we take things into our own hands and we stop giving our bodies to doctors who don't really care how we feel. They don't really care if we feel better. They care for us to come back again and again for more and more so that they can get more and more money. I don't think that's right. I think it's absolutely a travesty. And the only person who can take your life and your body back is you. So pay attention. Start listening to yourself. If this episode made you feel uncomfortable, then sit with that uncomfortable feeling until you figure out what it means for you and where you want to go next. Next week, I'm going to finish my review of Dr. Kelly Brogan's book, including identifying the things that she talks about that she believes are contributing to this inflammation that's so widespread in our body. And I'll do a quick review of the recommendations that she has. Of course, if you want to go out and find the book yourself, it's easy to find on Amazon, and I've given you her name. It's in the show notes. But I want to challenge you. I want to encourage you. I want to make you mad if that's what I have to do, to get you to go and do something, to listen to your body and heal your life. I'm Tamara Bess. Thanks so much for listening.